Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting of the Planning Commission of the City of St. Helena to order as regularly scheduled for Tuesday, June 4th, and I will lead the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Gamera, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Hale?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
Commissioner Monette?
Here.
Vice Chair Pont?
Here.
And Chair Hardy?
Here. Ms. Gamera, I understand you have an announcement to make?
Correct. As the elevator is currently out of order, for ADA accessibility, we have a TV downstairs as well as a phone where people can watch the meeting, the meeting live, as well as call in for any public comment.
I guess this would be in the documentary category?
I think it's more a reality show.
Yeah, that's for sure. So that brings us to the public forum. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the commission on matters that are not on our agenda, and because they're not on the agenda, if you come to speak, we will not be able to offer any substantive response, but we'll take note. Is there anyone who would like to take advantage of the public forum? Very good. Seeing none, we'll move on to section 4 of the agenda. This is the consent calendar. We have 3 items on the consent calendar. Approval of the minutes of May 21st, adoption of a final resolution regarding a short-term rental permit at 1220 Edwards Street, and a design review exemption for 1150 Main Street in the Central Business District. Members of the commission or members of the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be pulled for discussion. Is there any commissioner who would like to pull something from consent?
I would like to pull 4.3.
Very good. We'll set that aside for discussion. Anyone else on the commission? Are there any members of the public who would like to remove an item from consent? Seeing none, then I would entertain a motion for approval of items 4.1 and 4.2 on the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Gamero?
Commissioner Monette?
Yes.
Commissioner Hale?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Pont?
Yes.
Chair Hardy?
Yes. That brings us to item 4.3. Director House, will you be presenting the staff report?
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Hardy and members of the Commission. Item 4.3 is a design review exemption proposing to allow the installation of umbrellas, benches, and other minor exterior modifications to the existing structure and site at 1153 Main Street. 1153 Main is a quarter-acre parcel developed with a approximately 1,300 square foot convenience store and a gas station. What wasn't acknowledged or identified in the background section is that this site was previously subject to an administrative determination by the Planning Department, which was approved by the Planning Commission to allow the continuing use of a convenience store at this location. That was added to the agenda last week, and so it is available for the public and the commission to review. But just, it was background information that wasn't provided previously. The proposal is just to add benches, umbrellas, and some other minor exterior modifications to this structure. It's worth noting that all the features are proposed to be open to and available to the public during all hours of the business being operated. And so whether you are a patron of the business or not, you can take advantage of the benches, use the restroom, those types of things. They are accessible. Staff reviewed the proposal from the applicant in keeping with the general plan and zoning requirements as well as those of CEQA. And as identified in the zoning district for central business, staff identified that the improvements were accessory to the primary use and clearly incidental and subordinate site features, and the changes raised no substantial design problems, and as such schedule it for a design review exemption decision by the Planning Commission. Happy to answer any questions. There's a resolution attached which identifies a number of conditions of approval.
Thank you, Director House. Commissioner Pont, why don't you begin?
Yeah, an easy one to start with. I looked at the plans, I can only see 4 stop blocks, but supposedly there's 5 parking spaces. Where's the 5th one?
The applicant can answer that question if you'd like.
Okay, I just thought maybe you would. We don't seem to have a definition for convenience foods in our ordinance anyplace, or even convenience store. It just is what it is. Has there been any historical definition of that at all?
So this was one of the kind of decision points regarding the administrative determination. Staff went back and forth with the applicant trying to define that, given the exact concerns that you've identified, to specify exactly what would be sold and provided in the store, and essentially to allow or to try to determine what is the definition of a convenience store, given ours is lacking. And that was included with the administrative determination that was provided to the Planning Commission.
I didn't see a definition for convenience.
It was more identified what is being proposed to be sold.
Okay. I mean, I saw this.
The applicant also provided some examples of potential benches that could be installed as a reference point for the commission.
Has the applicant already been issued a building permit for this work?
They've been issued a building permit for the site improvements and tenant improvements that have been ongoing.
Including this work?
I don't believe that all of this work is permitted. There may be some elements which would facilitate the installation of some of these, but again, the applicant can speak to that.
Okay. Okay. I'm wondering about 17136-080B3. And it starts off with a prohibition and then ends up with a list of things that are allowed. The prohibition is that all operations and display of merchandise will be kept within an improved structure. So that's the prohibition. Then it lists that which the exceptions, except those directly required for the dispensing of gasoline, water, and air, and the replenishment of oil. It doesn't seem to allow any other kind of use, operation, or display outside the interior of the structure. Is that?
So 17.136080 is titled Service Station Requirements. So none of the, I think this site was a service station at one point. However, now it's only proposed to operate as a gas station and a convenience store.
Well, number 5 includes the convenience store. So I would suggest this whole section B covers gasoline and convenience store. I don't see anything under 5 that would allow you to dispense or operate anything outside the enclosed structure.
Again, staff looked at that as specific to a service station. There's no automotive service proposed as an element of this, but the commission could choose to look at it that way.
I don't see anything under 5 that says, gee, convenience store items are accepted.
I don't understand your question.
So looking at the service station definition, service station means a parcel of land or portion of a parcel of land developed exclusively for the purpose of and with facilities for the sale of motor vehicle fuels, which may also provide lubricants, tires, batteries, accessory items, and other customary services for motor vehicles, delivery of which is made directly to the vehicle. Servicing a motor vehicle shall be generally limited to lubrication, non-mechanical washing, replacement of spark plugs, and it goes into what defines service. And then says major vehicle repair is not permitted. For purposes of this title, the term shall also include gas station and accessories service station. So I think we're getting into a situation where our code it's kind of the antiquated elements of our code, and one of the kind of more convenient and or unique business models that's being proposed, and we just don't have a solid fit.
But it seems to be the only section that allows a convenience store is under B5. Would that be correct? That use, meaning the service station.
Aren't we just looking at the benches?
Because all the others start off with that use, whether they're talking about solely gasoline or petroleum products. So I would suggest that use is indeed the service station.
Permit thing.
Again, I think it says these are service station requirements, and then under B, which is B5, the following criteria shall be met prior to the approval of a service station. And this is one of the specifics.
Has the service
So-
station been approved?
Excuse
No.
me.
Oh, okay.
And just a fair warning to all, we have a packed agenda tonight. So I'm going to be a bit more assertive in exercising my prerogative as chair to manage the discussion, not to cut anyone off unnecessarily or limit what you can say, but really just to keep things moving forward.
I'll hurry this up. How many seats do you expect to be provided?
There was no specific request, and staff didn't look at it. Again, given that it wasn't providing restaurant seats because there's no tables, it's proposing benches only. It wasn't seen as an expansion of the use, and further, that was supported by the fact that it's available and open to the public. So again, it's kind of a unique situation that did not fit clearly into our code, but provides significant community benefit from the staff perspective. And so staff, in looking at the project and the request as a whole, thought that this was the most appropriate process by which the Planning Commission and the public could both review and decide on the action, but also it not be somewhat of a onerous and extensive process for such a minor request.
So, because of the grade, this site only appears to have access from Main and Spring Street. Is that correct?
I believe that would be correct.
Pedestrians more.
Okay.
You mean car?
Pedestrian and vehicular access are both
Well,
from.
but only be Main and
One side.
Spring. In other words, you can't walk up from behind it. So, and the plan. That's probably enough for now.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioners who would like to address questions to Director Hausch? I see the applicant is here. Mr. Gott, would you like to say something to the commission at this point? Thank you.
Hello, Joel Gott, St. Helena. So the goal with what I was trying to create in the back there was, because it was just a paved piece of parking lot behind it that there was no way to really have cars egress in and out of anywhere efficiently, was to put that hedge in so that we have more green there, because it's a big land of asphalt, but keep the hedge at a low enough point that if you were at Klaus Cleaners or Sunshine, you could see out to Main Street. We didn't want to wall it off in any way, but to create some green. And then the best use of any benches or public space that I've seen is in Yountville, which we had the photo up there in front of Bouchon Bakery. Thomas Keller ended up putting, over the last several years, just benches throughout that area. And it's not a very big area, about the same square footage as probably what we're dealing with. And if you go there at any point during the day, it's this great environment, or even into the evenings, of people who are using it that either been to Bouchon Bakery or over at Vintage 1870. So it's this great, if you would, little town meeting area. In downtown, in that district, we don't have kind of a public area. So my thought was the best use of the space was to somehow activate it with some green screen, some shade. I put a hand washing sink out there. We got a public restroom, and to put park benches so that anybody, if your significant other is at Vintage Home buying something, you got a place to sit, or if you got a burrito at Villa Corona, you could sit there and eat it, or if you're just killing time, you got a place to kill time. Give us some green screen. So to me, it was the best use of like turning it into a public space. And that picture does pretty good justice, but anytime anybody's in Yountville driving by, watch the number of people that sit there. It's this great, mix of tourists and locals. So I thought it was a great use.
Thank you. Are
Can
there
I-
any questions for Mr. Gott?
Yeah, is there any way to safely put a little pedestrian path in the green, a space in the green, so that when I'm walking around, I can enter from the parking lots? Or I
So
don't know if that's
we
safe.
looked at doing that, and there's a grade difference there. And my fear is that there would be some sort of issue between a parking space, like as you're leaving an active parking lot. Now, today when I was there, I was going between the bushes because you can just jump down if there's nobody there. But I would also worry that I'd be taking one of Sunshine's or Klaus or the pizza place or laundromat's parking space. So I left the two big open ends on either end, and then we designed this cool, it's a, what do you call it, like a parking bollard, like a safety bollard, so that somebody pulling in to get fuel can't run into somebody entering or exiting any points of that or into the back.
Okay.
So it's just a nicely designed, like handrail bollard system.
Thanks. Thank
Are
you.
there any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, if I can.
You may.
I'll try and be brief. To start with, I only see 4 stop blocks. Where's the 5th space?
I don't have a pointer, but I can show you on this plan. So over here, this is Main Street right here, right?
Could you switch to A1?
It's right here. It's on the edge, so there's no parking block there. That's the 5th space.
Okay, so you're going to stripe it, but not have a stop block.
Yeah, and to be honest with
That's
you,
probably not the best idea.
Yeah, one big, the problem that we're running into there, the more time I've been there, is when big trucks, because that's only diesel in town. So when a big truck is fueling up, they need almost more space than we technically have there. So I'm a little nervous about how that parking space will be used. And you can't run them in any further because it makes it more. So we were going to go out and really mark out the rest of them and then see what the real use of the big trucks are, then come back and stripe it with what reality is so the trucks can get in and out of there.
So you might end up with 4 rather than 5.
We can actually we could stack a 5th one if need be over on the curb where our garbage is.
Okay.
Because we're going away from the rolling big bins, the yard bins, down to the, like what people have at their houses. We're able to go into those away from the big stuff, so we can, if need be, put our 5th there.
It looks like most of the interior building is blocked off for staff only.
Yep.
So how is this intended to work?
So the main goal is everything you can buy at a convenience store, but we want to make it. We want to make like 90% of it. So we're making everything that we're going to sell there over at the Cindy's Backstreet building, which we just finished. And then we've got a delivery truck, which is supposed to be electric, but it wasn't delivered on time. So we got a little Ford one for the time being. And it'll be brought over 3 times a day from that kitchen, restocked into the gas station building.
So you're going to sell sandwiches,
Chips.
burritos.
No, I'm trying not to. I don't want to poach on like Villa Corona's business or Sunshine's build sandwich business. So we're going to have 3 or 4 sandwiches we're going to pre-make. We make all the bread, and then we'll pre-make them, pre-wrap them in a PLA bag. And then like the chips we'll fry every day. We'll do them in a paper bag. We've got a grain bowl and a little salad, a couple juices that we'll make. And then a couple, like we've got a full coffee set up in there too. So essentially similar to like what you could get at the 76, instead of mass market production, we're going to make it internally, make it from scratch.
But you are providing seating. That's the difference.
Yeah, there will be somebody will buy something in our store and then walk outside and sit for sure. But my goal is to make it so it's more like what you see in front of Bouchon, where it's community seating. That's what we put the public bathroom into. I want to try to activate that area so that it's more
How many
used.
How many seats you're going to provide?
Well, Karen, our architect, is here in the 3rd row on the right-hand side, and so it's
spotlight.
Karen and I have talked about everything from 6 really big park benches to having, there's a great metal shop guy over behind Central Valley about having to make custom legs and doing one really long one that snakes alongside the hedge. We looked at the ones that Karen put up in the presentation or ones that we could buy from like a commercial, like where the city park benches came from. Yeah, like that's a commercial one that you can buy. So we were going to try to find what we thought would fit. Those are actually really comfortable. You instantly slouch in them. So I think we would
I
just
vote
go
for
and,
comfort.
we would go and find what we think would be long lasting, low maintenance, and super durable. Because undoubtedly, you know, they're going to get trashed in some way. We thought these ones were pretty cool, platform ones. Yeah. So you could sit there with a group of friends, you know, 3 people on each side, all having a different conversation, kids standing on top of it.
So your model includes some idea that people could buy at your store, turn the corner and sit down and eat.
Yep. I would say the majority of our revenue will come from pickup from the office community in town and walk back to their office or to wherever they end up eating lunch. There'll be another set of tourist community that's a walk in, grab a coffee, and walk up to Model Bakery. There'll be another group that somebody goes to Villa Corona, picks up a burrito, picks up a pre-made from us, and sits down, or a sunshine sandwich. So I think it'll be a pretty good mix.
That's probably enough.
Very good. Are there any other questions for Mr. Gott? Thank you.
Thanks. Just one last thing. Thank you,
Yes.
Noah, for everything for our town. Much appreciated. We're going to miss you.
I will open the public hearing. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment on this application?
Hi, I'm Christine Hale from St. Helena, and I just want to say that that little corner is kind of ugly, and this will be beautiful. And I think it would be a huge addition, and having somewhere to sit there, if you've ever bought a sunshine sandwich, there's nowhere to sit. So, thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion. I think I need to hear now from everyone but John, not to exclude you from further comments, but I need to understand where the rest of the commission is here. Ms. Manette?
I think it's a wonderful plan. I really like it, and I like the ambience that it suggests, and I'm certainly going to use it and just to sit, and you could play chess or cards on those big benches, and so I really like this project. I have no problem with it at all.
Commissioner Hale?
I think it's terrific and sensitive to the original building and sensitive to the town. I think it's providing a lot of that it doesn't even have to community amenity. You know, I think we've got all of a sudden we've got more public bathroom space that we hem and haw and complain about, and somebody's doing it, and I think we should applaud that. And I think we should also point out that that's not a necessary thing. That's a choice that somebody makes, that a business person in our community has made, and I applaud it. I think bring it on. Let's bring this to a vote and get it.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson?
I like it. I think it's a good addition. I walk around town a lot with my family, and I think it'd be a nice place to stop and rest and wash grubby little hands.
Can I add one sentence? I'm hoping
Yes.
for some organic and gluten-free.
You're on your own with that one, Mr. Gott.
You got to see what we wrote in the restroom, though. If everybody gets a chance in the next couple of weeks.
Graffiti?
We pre-graffitied it.
Okay, if I see any gluten-free remarks in there, I'll make a note.
If I could.
Please.
although the applicant has a great track record in town, well-known, liked, the unfortunate part of this is once we act, that becomes permanent. That's a permanent addition to this site. He doesn't own it, somebody else could have it. And that's where more of my problem comes from than not. Because frankly, the code doesn't seem to allow it under strictest reading. On top of that, we have 40 seats back there, 50 seats back there, and they're serving food. So what we have, or could have, if somebody chose to operate it that way, would be a 50-seat open-air fast food restaurant that we are backing into without permits, without consideration, without sufficient parking, right next to a parking lot that's already overloaded. So I'm not impugning your ideas or your approach. I'm just thinking 10, 15 years down the line, when somebody else owns this, sees what it potentially could be, and runs it like a 40 or 50 seat fast food restaurant with no parking that they have no responsibility for. A total bloody mess.
There's protection for that,
No, there isn't, the way this is written.
Gentlemen, if there's going to be dialogue, both parties need to be at a microphone.
Because it's convenience food, which is kind of undefined in the code at this point. And since if we do change the code, this used to be grandfathered. So this is a permanent addition to the Commonweal. And I don't know if we want to back into a 50-seat or a 40-seat fast food restaurant, particularly when we have two other places in town that can come forward and make the same argument. That's my fear, and I don't see anything preventing that here.
Mr. Gott, would you like to speak to that? I'm happy to reopen the public hearing. No? Then I will not. Well, I guess I'm genuinely in the middle here in the sense that I think the project's brilliant, but I'm, if not as uncomfortable as Commissioner Punt, I'm certainly generally distressed by the number of times we find ourselves making what could, I think, fairly be called generous or even creative interpretation of the code in order to allow a project we find, meritorious on its own feet, to allow it to go forward. Of all of the concerns I've heard articulated, the one that seems most immediate to me is the potential conflict with the Sunshine parking lot, which is already problematic in terms of conflict between parking for the merchants who occupy the property and have the rights to the parking, and use by people who find it simply a convenient spot to park. And I will confess I am one of those guilty parties from time to time. That's an issue that we could address simply by approving the project subject to a review in a specified period of time, 1 year or 2 years, just to inquire and to give the merchants behind this property an opportunity to let us know if they had an issue with how it was functioning in terms of parking. I don't think that's that's a kind of issue that could actually turn into a real conflict. I agree with Mr. Pont. We always need to make our decisions with awareness that the entitlements we create run with the property, and no matter how much we're impressed by the applicant, we can't assume that the applicant will always be the property owner and the manager of the operation. With all that said, what really strikes me most strongly about this particular situation is we have a proposal here that's designed, I think, authentically to add some life to that particular part of Main Street at a time when there's concern from merchants from one end of Main Street to the other that there isn't enough life and activity, that there aren't enough customers coming to their stores. And I don't know that this particular proposal does anything for other retailers on Main Street. I just don't know. But I do know, I believe, this is just a personal belief really, that long-term Main Street has got to be more appealing to the people who come to St. Helena, who might consider coming to St. Helena as a place for pedestrian activity and shopping and eating, in order to strengthen the businesses on Main Street. And we've got at the end of this long agenda, I think, a presentation about Main Street beautification. So it's not simply on my mind, it is in some sense on the agenda today. I would support approval subject to a review. Honestly, although it's typical to make reviews at 1 year, I think that's probably premature. I would make it a review in 2 years, just so that we find out if there are any issues with the operation.
What would that be a review for? What we're granting tonight, so that it could be rescinded, or how would that work?
I would be happy to focus it particularly on concern about potential parking conflicts with the adjoining property. That to me is the most obvious subject for review. Another concern, I'll sort of rephrase what Commissioner Pontus said, would be the prospective conversion of the type of convenience store that's proposed into something better classified as a restaurant.
So then the review would kind of determine whether there should need to be a use permit or something changed? Because my sense is the parking thing is going to be very difficult to determine, because it's quite possible that people that are going to patronize this place are going to be people coming with sandwiches from Sunshine, going to be pedestrians or people who get gas there, who buy things to put in their cars. And how do you determine if the parking issue in the Sunshine parking lot and the Class Cleaners parking lot is from that business and not just from, an increase in, it seems to me that would be very difficult to determine.
Well, I don't know that we'd
And
be in a
impossible to
position
fix.
of determining anything exactly like that. It's an opportunity for neighboring businesses and property owners to let us know if they think there's a problem, and then we take it from there.
Okay, though I noticed
But
they're
honestly,
not here tonight.
if
But how would we fix it? I guess I'm just curious if I vote yes for that motion, I want to know what I'm voting for. That's why I'm asking this. And so I would be okay with the with looking at the use, if it actually turns into an outdoor restaurant more than it's anticipated at this point, that we might look in terms of that use, or I'm not sure what we would do in 2 years.
nor am I really. What that does is it brings the project back into a public meeting on a planning commission agenda that creates an opportunity for people to inform us whether they like what's going on or not. And then whether or not there's something we can or should do, we have to determine.
That would be determined then, because the idea wouldn't be if there's a lot of complaint, then something will be rescinded. Because that would seem to me to be the only reason you'd want to review it in 2 years. If it's bad, then you change it. But I don't get how it works.
It works the way I just said. We have to figure it out as we go along. It either works that way or it doesn't work at all. Most of the time, very little happens at reviews because most of the time projects work the way they're intended to work. It's a rare occasion I can't actually think of one where projects come back here or any other jurisdiction I know for a review where some great issue is turned up. The only context in St. Helena that doesn't fit that has been with the short-term rentals.
Short-term rentals, I was just going to say.
Short-term rentals have been their own thing, and yes, the periodic reviews have made a difference and have led to termination of some of those permits, which are terminable anyway by their terms. They don't run forever. But
Thank
you know, I'm not. I could be persuaded that we should just approve it and leave that alone, but you know, my mind is open to taking Commissioner Punt's concerns into account through setting a scheduled review, just to see if there are any problems that need addressing. So that's.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And if there's no other discussion, then this would be the time for someone to make a motion.
I guess I would have to weigh in on the parking situation or the review part before I would. I mean, I'd be happy to make a motion to approve it without a review kind of piece in there. The problem I see with the review is how are we not setting precedent for any business? I mean, the way I understand the parking, sunshine parking is a private parking. You know, and it's posted as, you know, you're not technically allowed to park there and not, you know, use those businesses. We all know that happens. But who's to say, you know, how are we, you know, treating this applicant, or how are we not setting precedent for 3 doors down from this applicant that a business changes that starts to be successful? And they obviously don't, they're not providing their own parking, and those folks end up parking. I mean, the parking is a problem that we may need to address as a city, but I don't think should be done, shouldn't encumber this. I don't believe it should encumber this applicant or this application. You know, I think, you know, as far as convenience, I mean, talking about fast food, I think that's totally inappropriate to even, you know, discuss in regard to this. That's not what's being approved here. You know, the food's being made off-site. It's dovetailed in as a convenience store, and it's creatively sort of alternative sourcing, but it's not a fast food restaurant by definition. And I think we do a disservice to ourselves as a commission and to this town when we throw that out at an applicant. I think we should be clear that this is what it is, and the sky's not falling. We can't guard against success, you know, and I think we've been, you know, I think we've got an application before us that's creative and intelligent and sensitive, and provides much more than many alternatives might, and we should applaud that, not encumber it, not take that as a opportunity to dig an extra, you know, layer of skin out of our applicant. So I would happily move to to approve it. And I guess that's what I'm doing. So I would make a
Was
motion.
that a motion?
That is a motion.
Second.
Any further discussion?
If I could.
Yes.
The difference here, Daniel, is the seating. That's what changes this potentially from a convenience market into something else. And I've been places, and you probably have too, that what started off as a convenience market is now significantly more than that. And I'm afraid that this is being backed into as significantly more than that. We're going to allow seating. They sell food. I hate to say this, but that's pretty much quick food. That's pretty much the definition of a fast food restaurant.
I'm going to leave the public hearing closed. We're behind schedule already.
Out of the consent calendar.
So I've got a motion, I've got a second. I'll make a further comment. If the seating has the greatest downside here, I would, and I'm not sure I disagree with that as a, long-term potential. I think it's also got the greatest upside for the community. And so I'm willing to take that chance. Ms. Gamara, would you call the vote, please?
Commissioner Hale,
Yes.
Commissioner Monette,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Pont,
No.
Chair Hardy.
Yes. That brings us to public hearings. We have 4 public hearings and then the scheduled matter, which is the presentation on downtown streetscape. Again, it's just the nature of the agenda. I will have my eye on the clock, and I am going to try to move this along as best I can. Not sure how much I can do, but we'll see. The first item is 5.1. This is design review and demolition permit for 1443 Stockton Street. Mr. Guston, it looks like this one is yours. Will you be presenting the staff report?
No, sir. This is going to be a request for a continuance from the applicant who is unable to attend and could not get a representative here.
Okay. Well, I believe
fast as I
it
can
is. I should be so lucky. So then I will open the public hearing, as it is a noticed public hearing. The public hearing is open. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to this matter? If not, when I see none, the public hearing is closed. So it is, I believe, under the circumstances at the commission's discretion whether or not to continue. And is this a request to continue to a date certain? Or are we in the unfortunate position of really not knowing?
As of this afternoon, the last email I got was today was the applicant's daughter's graduation, and things were unfolding too fast for her to make a decision. I told her that we would recommend continuance to the next Planning Commission meeting, June 18th, and she would let me know within the next day or two whether that was doable, and we can adjust accordingly.
So staff is recommending the commission continue to a date certain of June 18th, and if that's not able to be met, the applicant will have to pay an additional public hearing fee for a renoticing.
Can we continue the continuance if June 18th doesn't work for the applicant?
Staff can look into that option to try to save the notice cost.
Okay, move to continue.
Well, I have a question. What if we continued it to a date uncertain? Then would the applicant have more input to and not have to do the other fees?
If it's a date uncertain, that we have to renotice it, so the fee will be required. I don't believe we'll be able to continue it twice to a date certain, but continuing to the June 18th is the only way that we can, as of right now, guarantee that there is at least an effort to try to save the applicant that fee.
Could we continue to July?
That would be another option, however, it was not discussed with the applicant.
It's okay.
All right, move
okay with
to continue to June 18th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Will we actually have a design to review at that point?
We've got one now.
I don't see it.
Yeah, that one's on me, Mr. Chairman. That was my error. So it kind of worked out that a convenient way to save face for my mistake was her sending me an email saying that she couldn't make it anyway. So I'm owning that mistake. It was